Hello.
Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Suresh Palani. I'm a general manager at Microsoft, and I lead the data platform strategy and heavily invested in the security data gravity, right? That can help the agentic SOC, right, and ensure that we can do some of the detections more accurately and at a faster pace compared to where our attackers currently are.
Yeah. You spoke about faster pace and also security. Sometimes they don't go well because you need to move fast, but you cannot compromise on the security. So how do you strike the balance?
Yeah, so this is a key question for many of our customers,
Right.
and their business is has a lot of enterprise level guarantees they provide to their end users and customers, right? And they cannot just go fast and make mistakes, right?
Right.
It's going to be counterintuitive and potentially even more harmful to customers, right? So this is where we our entire strategy is around how do you make it more reliable, more contextual. So the same actions a veteran or a seasoned SOC can take, we can replicate it with agents, right? So this is where we talked about the entire data gravity strategy and how we can make the data security ready, right? By contextualizing, identifying the right signals out of it, enriching with the right signals, etc., right? And providing them, in an easy way to be accessed that can be used by agents or even humans in the loop, right? How they can look at the data, analyze it, visualize it, right? And make durable and accurate security detections. Right now, it becomes that the data is available and it's secure. Right now, agents make that work faster compared to what a human can do. Right, and they are always on kind of mode. Right, that will make it overall effective for the customers and for the security point of view.
Okay. Agents use LLMs. LLMs can hallucinate, right? So when I'm talking to probably a chatbot that's an agent, and then I want to query on a data, how do you ensure someone else's personal identifiable information is not exposed to me?
Yeah. Right. So in Microsoft, right. So there is this entire two different parallel efforts that is going on. One is how do you use AI for security, and there is another effort that we call how do we use security on AI. Right. So there is a governance aspect to it. There is a security aspect to it. Right. So we want to create some of these agents as first-class citizens. Right. So like think about Entra. Right. Every user in a system has an identity with which we can track what actions the user did, what all profiles the user has across the environment and the footprint, right? And similarly, we have a similar construct on the agent, right? You treat the agent as a first class user in the system, right? And you treat them with the same zero trust how you treat the user as, right? And then you want to monitor what actions the agent takes, right? And again, we can use the same data platform to even monitor what activities are happening as part of the agent. Has the agent gone rogue, right? Is it accessing data that it's not supposed to access, right? So these are some things we can monitor on top of it, right? That's the entire security and governance initiative on top of what the agent does, right? It's kind of completing the loop, right? And always at the end, right? This is what I was telling in my talk also, that the human aspect is always there, right? That's the top of the pyramid, right? Though the agent is automating the actions, there is always going to be this human involvement who are going to authorize, approve, and oversee some of the actions to ensure that there is no adverse outcome as a result of agent executing, right? And also ensure that agent doesn't leak any of this data, right? And many of the products that we have are kind of integrating this as part of their solution. Like say if you go to Entra, right, you can assign permissions to agents, what the agent can versus cannot access, right? You go to Purview, right? Purview is going to classify the the risk score for an agent, right? So as if you do on a user, right? So those kind of give the same level of guarantees that you do as a a human, right? That ensures that the agents are still monitored and they don't go wild with respect to what they do.
Right. Human in the loop is absolutely important, but humans can hallucinate too. Right? for example, I had a party last night, and today I'm looking at some approval process, and I'm like, just click on it. So when it goes to production,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what are the signals that you look for to identify something is going wrong? And then that is MTDD and how long you're going to do. And then what are the steps that you take to resolve and recover?
Yeah. So this is an interesting question, right? And this has been we even had some recent incidents where we are thinking the user act or human took a wrong action, right? So this is where we are looking at, instead of looking at it as a one-off thing, right? This is where we are looking at building a pattern and a baseline for an user, baseline for an agent, right? So with which we can compare the action of an user or an agent to say, is this within the acceptable parameters of what the user or agent is expected to do, right? That is kind of the way we think of a defense, and anytime it goes beyond those parameters, that's when you basically trigger an activity saying that okay, there is something wrong happening, right? So this is the monitoring that we build. Similarly, how we build on a user or an agent, you can build on any entity, you can build on any, say you want to protect domain controller, or you want to protect CEO's mailbox, right? You can have special monitoring or detections that are on top of it, so you can monitor what kind of activities that are happening, and then you can take preventive actions or even block some of these things from happening. That's where some products like Purview etc. come into play, right? With the data leak protection, the privacy management, so many other features that can ensure that you can block the action before it actually happens.
So how do you stay on top of the vulnerabilities? It can happen anytime, anywhere, right? So how do you stay on top of it?
So yeah, this is a great question, and this is some of the things that gives the CISO sleepless nights.
I know.
Right? And there are a few things that I can think of, right? So there are different companies who are investing heavily in the zero-day kind of attacks, right? Where there's a brand new attack, you're seeing it for the first time, right? How good they're able to prevent it, as well as how quickly they can come and mitigate it, right? Not every attack is preventable. It is always that slips through the cracks, right? And it has to be a multi-layered defense, right? If you cannot protect, how quickly can it detect and mitigate and block? And this is where again, agents will come to our help, right? That they are, kind of monitoring the system even when we are sleeping, right? So it can detect, alert, or take actions to ensure that we don't cause irreparable harm.
Okay. So these days, some of the attacks are not by hitting the systems and trying to find out, the great methodologies to get to the systems or break the firewalls. It's probably some scam where some employee or somebody
Yes.
is giving out in a party, and just that. That is out of your control, right? Or do you?
Yeah. So it is, you're absolutely right? This is one of the biggest threats. While people are looking at protecting the perimeter, protecting the network, right? How do you protect the identity from compromise, right? Once a user gets compromised, right? Say I had an account, it got compromised. I have no clue that some login that happened at 9 o'clock, was it done by me or the impersonator who did that, right? This is where the zero trust principles and the least privilege, right, comes into play, right? This is where this is where the human factor comes into play, where I as a security admin or a data administrator ensure that I give the minimum privileges that I grant. So even if a compromise happens, right, my blast radius that we call, right, is very limited in nature, right? And this is where there are different levels of protection that's applied to different kind of resources based on the security score or based on the risk score, right? So like a mailbox, a CEO's mailbox will be far more heavily protected and guarded compared to an information worker's mailbox, right? Similarly, an admin's identity will be monitored far more compared to a user's identity. So once you can create a baseline of what the role is and what it's supposed to be, right? You can create different levels and layers of defense on top of it, right? And one of the things that we do is like 5 years back, right? Admin could log in and do anything, right? Now even if admin logs in and does it, there is a two-factor auth, or there is a second factor approval even for some of these actions that can be put into say, oh, if this admin says go and delete that mailbox, right? So you can always put a restriction to say, okay, another person has to come and approve. right? So a second level of defense or a second layer of defense kind of helps mitigate the problems. Even something got compromised, you are basically protecting the system or protecting the blast radius that we call.
Okay. So you're saying that a phishing email that comes on my inbox has a different impact compared to the same email and CEO's inbox.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Because they may have information, a lot more information like IP, a lot more sensitive information about the company, about the stock predictions, etc. Right, and therefore there is a far more need for those to be protected. Or even if the mail say came to me, right, now that mail has to be protected because that is similar in nature, right? This is where Purview or products like that come into play, where they classify some of this content, and once that content is classified, right, we are not able to share it easily with anyone, right? There's the same thing happened for my presentation, right? I got the presentation and you're not able to see it because it was rights protected, and
Okay.
it was not sure that whether it was a right access or not.
Okay, that's good. So for a regular corporate employee who's not in security field, who are not thinking security as an everyday thing, how do you build that muscle memory within the organization? For example, I really ensure that I don't click on any phishing, but sometimes the email is too good
Yeah.
that I have made mistakes too. Then when I
Yes,
click on
yes.
that, oh, it's a phishing test. Oh no, I know, I'm a very careful person. How did it happen? So how do you get that muscle memory built with every single person within the organization? Because one single weakness within an organization is an entry point.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
So, and even in Microsoft, right? I believe you still get it, right? We used to have this spam campaigns that we call, right, where the security admin will blast a bunch of mails and look at the user behavior. Are they clicking on the links, right? Are they reporting that it is a suspicious email, etc., right? But but if I look at the trainings that we used to have, right, it says look for the language, right? Look for whether there is some inconsistency in how it is written, right? Those have become less and less meaningful in these days, right? Where I can create a very perfect replica of the email Google would send, or PayPal would send, or Microsoft would send for your account or any other information, right? And this is where more protections need to be put on the system, right, rather than putting the onus on the user, right? I don't believe user is anymore the last line of defense. They are also an aspect in this, but you cannot entirely rely on them as a last line of defense, right? The last line of defense has to be our agents, our processes, and the security tools and products that every customer uses, right? And to put those preventive mechanisms or have those detections and remediation mechanisms as quickly as possible. Right? So I definitely, I don't think, we are there yet, right? But the industry and, all the products, the SIEM solutions, source solutions, the vendors, providers, etc., they are moving in that direction, right? So you can take the human out of it, and even if the human does the mistake, right, the philosophy is now the agent is able to catch rather than, the system made the mistake and the human is catching it.
Absolutely. I think the future is brighter.
Yeah, definitely, right? So,
all right. Thank you.
Okay,
so
thank
much.
you so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Nice